Hi, I'm a normal man, and this is the Sigma 16 to 300, 3.5 to 6.7, DCOS 67 millimeter? Now, besides the meme potential that is rampant in this lens in hindsight, I was pretty intrigued by this lens because I shoot on a crop sensor camera, the Canon R7. Now, I think the idea of a crop sensor specific lens is very fun because usually I think full frame cameras get all of the hype, right? Because they're good in low light and they have lots of megapixels and stuff like that. But this one it's a win for the little guys like me, and hopefully you if you're also shooting on a crop sensor camera. And I'm coming at this sort of review video as a regular guy approach. I'm not a professional, although I have used a camera in my job before. I am just a hobbyist who happened to rent this lens and get some pretty amazing pictures out of it, to the point where I did end up buying it after I was done. I just got so many pictures that I liked that I couldn't really justify not getting it. And not to bury the lead, this lens is pretty freaking awesome. It's an amazing travel lens, that's why I wanted to get it. I know that I'll be taking more trips in the future, and this is the lens that I want to have in my camera bag whenever I go, wherever I go. So maybe about 2 months ago, I was planning a trip to the Pacific Northwest in the Portland, Mount Rainier Olympic National Park area. And I had two sort of goals in mind. I wanted to be able to take landscape photos and shoot wildlife if I could. So originally I was going to rent two lenses, the Canon RF 16mm 2.8 and the Canon RF 100 to 400. So you've got your long and your wide. As I was looking through the telephoto section, I saw this little doodad. And I was like, well, shit. I mean, if this is just 16 to 300, that's basically everything I need in one lens. And that right there, ladies and germs, is the selling point of this thing, because basically it's an amazing travel lens. It's quite sharp. I didn't have any complaints in that department. It's light. It fits in your backpack. You don't have to worry about multiple lenses or changing multiple lenses. I can't imagine how many pictures I would have missed out on over that vacation if I had to actually swap lenses between 16 and 400. I would have half as many, if that, good pictures that I ended up with. And this lens kind of plays into the strengths and overcomes a bit of the weaknesses of crop sensor cameras. Let me explain. So you've got 300 millimeters fully extended, like this, and that equates to about 480 millimeters full frame equivalent, right? And then on the wide end, you have 16 millimeters, which I don't know if I can really explain this, but it actually feels wide. So if you shoot on a crop sensor camera, I have a 24 to 70, right? And 24 for a full frame camera, that would probably be pretty wide enough for landscapes. But on crop, that's really like 38 millimeters, which is like wide, but not like that wide, not as wide as I would want. So this lens actually feels wide to shoot with, even though it's only like 8 millimeters wider. I don't know if that does a good job of explaining it, but kind of where I'm going with this, where I actually get the experience of shooting with a wide angle lens, but I can also punch into like mega far distances and get some pretty insane shots while using it. All in one lens. Again, one lens. So a great example of just the incredible range you can get using this. So this is kind of where we parked when we first got to Mount Rainier, right? It's nothing special, just a regular picture. It's kind of an example really than anything. And then here's this picture, which looks like a completely different picture. You would have no idea that this is actually an extremely zoomed in version of this earlier picture, which you wouldn't even be able to pick out those trees if you tried at the wide end. But here, you can literally go all in, and it essentially fills the frame, these like 3 random trees here. It's just kind of insane. And here's another example. I'm at this bridge in Portland, and I just thought it looked kind of cool, kind of prison-esque, which was very topical with all the Portland whatever going on right now. And then I zoom in here and get this kind of tower. And, you know, you kind of get rid of all the bridge part, and you just have this kind of guard tower looking thing. It looks really good in black and white, which is what I ended up editing it as. Kind of the point I'm trying to make here is you can isolate a single element of a, composition and make it an entirely new composition. So the options are really limitless with this lens. If you see it, you can shoot it, and to have that capability with a travel lens is just a blast. Now, the Pacers and Thunder are about to start playing, so I'm going to try and move quickly through my other points here. Another great pro of this lens is the image stabilization, which paired with a camera that has in-body image stabilization, like the Canon R7, which is what I'm using, you can handhold 300 millimeters quite easily and just get really clean pictures and use lower shutter speeds than you would expect. I've used a 300 millimeter lens without image stabilization and without IBIS, and it was like doable, but it was like painful. Even if your camera doesn't have IBIS, the lens stabilization on this lens will do wonders for you. You know, here's a video of a bear that's probably a quarter of a mile away, if not more, and the video is smooth. I mean, it's not the smoothest thing in the world. You can still see me shaking around and whatnot, but I can maybe stabilize it in DaVinci Resolve and it looks like this, and that's pretty usable footage for hand holding. And again, that kind of adds to the all-in-one nature of this lens. You don't need a tripod, okay? It's stabilized, and if you're traveling around, do you really want to be traveling with a tripod anyway? Like, I saw people doing it, but I know I don't want to do that. I just want to be able to pull my camera out and take pictures, so. Here's my absolute favorite picture that I took on this trip, and I don't know if this is more of a credit to the lens or my camera, or probably both working together. I am at 300 millimeters in this picture, but on this sooty grouse that was next to a trail, so you can literally see Mount Rainier, me, and my family reflected in the bird's eye. Like, that's crazy. That is literally crazy that you can get that much detail in such a small space using this lens, and that's only because you can zoom into that extreme focal length. And also, the Canon R7 slaps. It's got 33.5 megapixels, so, you know, suck it. Here's another picture of a chipmunk. You can kind of see the hairs on its back. Just me looking at this picture, I'm like, that is sharp. You know, I don't need it to be any sharper than that. I'm a regular guy, remember, so this is sharp enough for me, and the fact that I'm getting these results with such a versatile lens was enough to sell me on it. Especially when you consider that 95% of pictures people are going to see are on their phone screen, so your images don't need to pass a pixel peep test. The lens is also pretty light. I carried it around basically non-stop for a full week and had no problems at all. If anything, my backpack was too heavy, but again, all-in-one lens, and it's light, it's compact, it's got image stabilization. I just keep repeating myself, but I feel like, you know, whenever you keep listing the pros off, they really start to add up and make this thing impressive. So one very major quirk, and I maybe it's not major to everybody else, but it was pretty major to me, is that maybe in the last 2 days or so of my trip, I realized that all of my photos were capping out at 7.1 aperture. That was the widest I could get my camera to go, which was weird because it literally says 6.7 on the side of the lens, and I was like, well, I can't actually get to 6.7. I can only get to 7.1. So I was like, what the heck? I had kind of already decided that I wanted to buy this lens, so I reached out to lens rentals to make sure I didn't have like a defective unit, because I didn't know what was going on. Why can't I get to 6.7? They had no idea, so I reached out to Sigma and they sent me this handy little chart, which basically says that your camera has to be set to 1/2 stop increments to be able to get to 6.7. If your camera is set to 1/3 increments, which mine was, you can't get to 6.7, you can only get to 7.1. So my advice to you would be, if you end up using this lens, either renting it or buying it, set your camera to 1/2 stop increments so that you can get just that little bit more of extra light on the long end, because I think it would have helped me, maybe not a ton, but it definitely would have helped. You know, no photographer is going to say no to more light, unless you're some freak, I don't know. Probably some people do, but I'm like hungry for light. Again, we're shooting on a crop sensor camera, so we need all the light we can get, mostly. And the low light performance of this lens is mixed to not great. I went to a beer garden, the Midtown Beer Garden in Portland, if you're familiar with the area. Shot this cool band. Their music was really good. I had a lot of fun. But for some reason, my camera was really struggling to focus on the lead singer. I remember she came down from the stage, and to me she was lit quite clearly, but for some reason my lens, or my camera was just searching and searching, and I was like, what is going on? I know for a fact I know for a fact my 24-70 EF Mark II L would have been able to find it instantly, but for some reason I couldn't with this lens, so low light, not the best, but it's not going to be because it's variable aperture, but it's usable. It's usable. I went to the Japanese garden in Portland and had a pretty similar experience. It's all forested in there, so there's not a ton of light. You know, I had to use some pretty low shutter speeds, which was fine unless people were in the shot, and then, you know, there was a lot of blur. I did get this picture, which, you know, kind of ended up working out, so even cons can be pros, I guess, something, who knows. Another cool quirk about this lens is that it can do macro photography. It has a 1:2 magnification range at 70 millimeters, which is like the optimal focal length to use the macro. I don't do macro really at all. I don't have a macro lens, although I guess technically I do now. But I knew whenever I was out that this lens was capable of doing macro, so I tried to get a picture of these mushrooms. There's like some water on it. I thought it looked kind of cool. I shot this picture at 30... Pacer Slender about to tip off. I shot this picture at 1/30th of a second, and this is, again, we're still handheld here, so this is another good example of the image stabilization. It's quite good, even in low light. And yeah, I mean, like, this picture isn't anything crazy, but, you know, it shows that you can do macro with this camera. And again, the image stabilization means that you can do it handheld. I presume most macro photographers are going to be using a tripod, and also that they probably already have a better macro lens than this. But, you know, I've got this now, so maybe it's something that I'll get into. At least I know that I can do it if I want to. Another note is that the focus ring on this lens... it's not going to focus, but it is programmable. You can change it to whatever you want. I changed it to manipulate the ISO when I was using it for a little bit. So I had ISO on one, shutter speed on another, and then my f-stop on the little wheel on the back of my camera. So like that was fun, not having to do any menus. I could just, you know, twist a knob or spin a dial and change my settings. That was fun. So I guess after glazing this lens for a bit, who is it for really? Because it's not for professionals. It's ultimately for people like me, and I assume you, just traveling average Joes who want to be able to take pretty pictures while they're on vacation. And I think this is really perfect for that. I mean, I got so many awesome pictures, some of the best pictures I've ever taken. And it's because of how versatile this lens is. That is the key word for this lens. It's versatile and epic. The Sigma 16-300 3.5 to 6.7 is available in L mount for the L mount Alliance, Sony E mount, Fujifilm X mount, Canon RF mount. That's it. So if you're going on a trip or vacation, give it a try. I will say if you end up renting this lens, Lens Rentals will take off 1 week of the rental price off the lens if you decide to buy it. So I spent about $160 to rent this lens for 2 weeks, and then at the end when I decided to buy it, I think it cost me around $740 to buy the lens. So if you only rent it for 1 week, you're getting a bit of a better value. I did it for 2 just because of how the days lined up, but that's just something to note. If you are interested in trying it, try Lens Rentals, because if you do end up liking it enough, you can get a small, like, discount, I guess, if you end up liking, In conclusion, I think this lens is actually a ton of fun, and it makes me feel like an 80 billion IQ genius for deciding to buy a crop sensor camera again, instead of upgrading to a full frame. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe. I don't do camera review videos. This is the one and only one on my channel. I usually do like gaming stuff, clips. So thanks for watching, and I probably won't see you next time.